All right, welcome back, MicroStar Electronics, and today we're going to be talking more about the USB-C and the communication. So if you aren't familiar with how the USB-C communicates, at least as far as an overview, we've been doing that and just talking about like the voltage levels and how to read them, and that's in the previous video, so video 1 and 2, so go back and check that out if you haven't already. But today we're going to be looking at the USB-C specifications in the manual that they have. This manual is over 1,000 pages long, so it's a big manual. So today we're going to talk about really only 4 pages out of the 1,000-page manual, and that will be enough to keep you thinking for a while. And I've been certainly studying this quite a bit. So we're going to start with what is called the biphase mark encoding, BMC, and it's basically an encoding such that, okay, so you got a device over here, and it's going to send data over to another device over here, okay? And so you're trying to send this data, and what you have is it's got a 300 kilohertz clock, okay? And when you're sending this data, you want to make sure that the clock on this end and the clock on this end see this data coming in at the same exact time so that it recognizes the ones and zeros correctly.
Because there's only one wire, right?
There's only one wire, yep.
So it's got to do the clock and the data simultaneously?
Yep. And so what it does is basically it splits these into chunks. And right up here it'll say this. It says, biphase clock encoding, BMC is a transition at every start of every bit. So if you imagine this is the start of every bit, okay? And that's basically your clock, okay? That's your clock. And the time period in there is about 3.3 microseconds, 3.3333 microseconds. So this is your time period right here of the clock. And that's the time it takes. So the way it works, and it says, it's actually a pretty good document, it says there's a transition at the start of every bit. Okay, that's these transitions I've already done. But then it says there's a second transition in the middle when a 1 is transmitted. And so what it's saying is this is a 0 because there's no transition between here and here. But this is a 1 because there's a transition between, so the transition is between, smack dab between the two. And so the transition right here, so that's your bit transition. As I was saying, your bit transitions are these, and then your in-between ones are 1s. So if you want a 1, you put another transition in there. It doesn't matter if the transition's to a high to low, or over here, low to high. So you'll see this is a 1, and that's a 1. Those are both 1s, and it doesn't matter that this transition was down and this transition was up. It's all about the fact that there's this extra transition in here. And over here, you'll see there's 2 1s in a row. So this is your transition, this is your bit transition, bit transition, bit transition, bit transition. While right here, there's this extra transition, and right here, there's this extra transition. So there you go, that was 1 1. Over here, you got 3 zeros in a row, there's no transitions, it's just plain old. And because of that, you're able to synchronize the clocks. And the clock on, it's like I had earlier, your device over here and your device over here can now send the data, and it'll know that, okay, we're at 300 kilohertz. Because what can happen is, if the clock over here is actually at like 250 kilohertz or something, and it's way off, and this is expecting 300 kilohertz, you start getting what they call bit stretching, and basically this is not synchronized up to this, and then you start getting bits in the wrong spots. So, and it'll inherently do it. Okay, so then the other thing we're going to talk about, because these are just like the basics to actually go read the data. You know, if you have a logic analyzer, which we're going to show.
Oh, hold on. Can we go back to the data bit one?
Yep.
So you got your clock cycles is the on the green, right?
Yep.
And that we know what those are based on the preamble or like whatever initialized thinking thing. But then, and we know it's a 1 when it transitions. So what's the difference between the data and the BM? Okay, the data is what we want to send.
Yep, this is the data you want to send. This is what's actually being sent.
That's what's actually being sent. So, okay, I think I understand now.
So the other thing now, to make it even more confusing, and this is where it gets crazy, and this is why nobody talks about it. They just use their little tools. I don't think a lot of people actually dig into this. This is something you're not going to get options to see very often. So the next thing, so the data here is the data up here, right? But before they even send the data, they actually call what's called a 4B, 5B encoder. And basically, you want to send 4 bits, which is like a hex number, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to send this number. Before they send the number, they create it and they make it into 5 bits. They scramble it up. And it basically will go to page, so that's actually goes to our next page in the document. So page 80, and we're actually going to go backwards here. Page 80, it says symbol encoding. Okay, so symbol encoding, all communication on the line shall with a line code be shall ensure a reasonable level of DC balance. So they want to make sure it's encoded, okay? And this is your encoder. So it's like you're literally scrambling up. So to send a 0, you have to send 11110. To send a 7, you have to send 0000, or sorry, 1111. So this is your little like lookup table. Now there's some other ones down here that aren't numbers. So K codes, sync 1, sync 2, resets, end of packet. So let's quick look at sync 1. Okay, this is where things really start making your eyes cross over. So 11000. That's what we're expecting for a sync 1. Now that we're out over here in the PulseView logic analyzer, which if you have a logic analyzer and you have this nice little PD encoder, you don't even need to know any of this stuff. You can just look at these numbers. But I think if you look at up here, there's these symbols. The nice thing is then you can actually see what's actually happened. So we also, by the way, we said it was about this is 285 kilohertz, the distance between here and here, and that was a 0. So like we said earlier, you could have the frequencies might not be exact. Why you have to have that clock synced, because this is at 285, so they both have to be at 285. So if you go over here, let's look for sync 1. So here's 2 sync 1s directly in a row. Now we said we're expecting, what was it we're expecting?
0.
Sync 1 was 11000.
Yeah.
Now what do we get here? We said the zeros are when there's no extra transition. So in the middle here, that's a 0. 0, 0, and there's a transition here, and then there's an extra transition here. So that would make 0011. But we expected 1100. Well, that's because basically the last shall be first and the first shall be last. So the most important bits were the 11s because they're like the most significant digit, right? Like it's like 11,000, right? So they come last. The zeros come first. And so it's not left to right like you're thinking. It's right to left. So that's why that's what gets a little confusing because the 11s came last, but that's these 11s. So we actually saw how this USB encoder detected that. Now we're gonna go into the power objects. Okay, so now we're going to go to the power objects. So we looked at how these things are encoded. So now we actually can read the numbers if we know what we're looking for. We can actually we can convert the 5B signal to 4B based on the BMC encoding. Okay, so now we're like, okay, we're actually doing good here. So 139, page 139 is, in my opinion, the most important thing. This is power data objects. So they also just call them PDOs, and there's three different options. Actually, there's like more because they pack them together, but there's fixed supply option, and that's basically the 5 volts, 12 volts, 9 volts, 15 volts, 20 volts. That's your standard. That's what most devices are going to be using. But then there's also what's called augmented, and then you can see here there's battery supply, variable supply. But you scroll down, there's 4 different options, and bits 31 and 30 of the packet they'll tell you whether this is fixed supply, battery, variable, or augmented. Now, like I said, fixed supply is what you're going to see the most often, but augmented supports PPS. Now, PPS was the programmable power supply, and you'll see here it says there are 3 types of augmented power data objects. SPR, standard power range, PPS. It's to expose a power supply whose output voltage can be programmably adjusted over the advertised voltage range and limited by the source to a programmable current limit. So that's if you want to have programmable and it can say I want this and it'll actually request a specific voltage. But then fixed supply.
Which devices normally do that?
There aren't really a lot of devices that use PPS. It's kind of seems like a wasted thing. Here it says the source and sink shall not negotiate a power level that would allow the current to exceed maximum current supported by the receptacles or the attached plug. So they're saying you can't ask for more current than what the actual connector is. Well, the connector is standard to 5 amps. So basically, you can't ask for more than 5 amps. Okay, so let's go real quick back to these PPS modes. And you'll see there's four bits here. So we wanted to look at bit 31 through 30, which is really bit 32 if you start at 1, if you start counting at 1. But this is 0000. So we expected 00. And this is where this stuff will make your head turn round and round. So we'll write it down as we go. So we see a 0 here. So I'll write it down. 0, And then there's a transition here, extra transition here. So 1, 1, 1, 1. So there's 4 ones. So 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, now, we expected 0, 0, 0, 0 because it's a fixed supply.
Right.
But
it's scrambled.
It's scrambled up. So we got to go back to our cheat sheet, which is page... We got to go back to our cheat sheet, which is page 80. So we expected 0, and we got 1, 1, 1, 1, 0. But remember we said the most significant comes last. So 0 came first. So we really did get 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. And really that's 1, 1, 1, 0. And therefore we actually did get a 0. Okay? Now we really want to see... Okay, actually, look at that. C. All right, starting back over. So actually we're looking for... This is C. So the way it works, the most significant bits, so this is 4B, okay, so this is the hex number. This is 1, 1, 0, 0.
Right.
So this is the least significant right here, and that's the most significant.
Right.
So if you do like 0, A, B, C, that's going to be equal, this last 4 bits is going to be equal to 0, 0, 1, 1. And so if this was 32 bits worth of data here, the last 2 would be 1, 1. And this would be your 31 and 30 bits. Bits 31 and 30. Does that make sense?
Kind of. It's just how it's coming in.
Yeah, because it's coming in least significant first. So you keep having to flip it in your brain because we normally think of if it's on the right side, it's most significant.
Right.
But in this computer world, when you're looking at the logic analyzer,
they send the least significant bit
first. Yep, so that's why you're really looking at. So this C, which is equal to 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, is really equal to 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, which is equal to C, which is equal to 1, 1, 0, 0.
But that's not PPS, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
How'd you know that?
Well, so this says right here, PPS mode.
Yeah, but we're supposed to go off your data.
Oh, so we'll go back to the sheet. So PPS mode is 1, 1, if it's bits 31 through 30.
Which is C?
Which is C. C is equal to 0, 0, sorry, this is not very good handwriting, which is what we got.
So when we first went up there, we were looking, when we first went to page 80, we looked at, we just took 1, 1. We took 3.
Yeah, we took 3, which was flipped backwards.
Oh, okay.
Because 3 is actually, so if you put 3 here, so if you cross that out and put a 3 here,
yeah,
then that would be 1, 1, 0, 0. And then the last 2, then you'd end up being in standard mode or something else besides this.
Yeah. Okay, got it. They typically send 32 bits a packet.
32. And that's why it said 32 right here.
Okay.
So now we can kind of read that, okay, this, we know if it's PPS based on these last number C or if it's a 0. And that's PPS as well, number 4. And then number 3 here, data object 3, is standard, 12 volts. Now, how do you know it's 12 volts and how do you know that the current is 1.67 amps? Okay, page 141. So, fixed supply data objects. So we talked about there's different objects. We're not looking at the augmented right now. All we're looking at is the fixed supply, which is only the ones you're really ever probably going to use, or your phone will ever use. But you'll see here, remember we said bits 31 through 30, 00B fixed supply. Okay, so we already looked at that. Now, I'm not going to look at the other ones. There's some other ones like EPR capable, extended power range. We're not looking at EPR right now. That's if you want to go more power than like phones ever use or anything. So let's look at voltage and maximum current. Maximum current is probably all the one we'll look at. If you want to figure out the max voltage, you can yourself. So max current, 10 milliamp units. So whatever number we have, they're in 10 milliamp units. Okay, and it's bits 0 through 9. Yeah, so let's take a look at this, see if we can decode this. So it looks like we've got 7, A, and then there's 0. So we're not going to worry about this one. And then it's also, and I wrote this down, least significant byte first. No.
Yeah,
this came first, so it's 7A.
Yeah. Yep, the 7A.
Yep, A, 0, 0. So this is the least significant.
And hold on, stay there for a second. So it said the first 10 bits, so we would chop it off right in the middle there.
Right here, yeah, but it's all 0, so it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? So 7A.
Yep, and so
so that is A7.
Because A was more significant than 7, because 7 came first. So if you convert that, it's 167.
But this is in 10
millivolts. So you can add a
amps.
0 on there.
So add a 0.
It won't let us add a 0. But so it's 100. It's 1,670 milliamps, which is 1.67 amps, which is
1.67 amps, right?
Which is 1.67 amps. So basically, we can now decode this. Like if you hid this so nobody can see it, you could figure what this out. Now you'd have to like write. You'd have to write it out, and you'd have to like mark it up, and like you'd have to. It'd be a lot of work.
Yeah, because you know where it starts.
I know where it started. Yeah, it did a lot of the work, but it's possible, is what I'm saying. And you could do it, or if you think it decoded wrong.
Or you make your own decoder.
Or you make your own decoder. Or you have to change this one because there's new specifications coming. So all I'm trying to do is get everybody so that they understand what this means, and when they look at it, they go, "Okay, I understand it." It's not some black box. This isn't. It's not a black box where it's like, we just used the tool. We just took the tool up and it always works. Like no, like we're not afraid of this. We can figure it out. We can dig into it. And this, by the way, this is only, like I said, 4 pages of the USB-C specification out of over 1,000. So you think of how much information is in that thing. We're gonna keep going through this series, and hopefully we're gonna keep learning more and more and more about USB-C. This is kind of like the basic level of like how does your phone get one of the voltages. Now the phone still has to respond, and that's a receive message. So maybe there's future videos coming. All right, stay tuned, guys.